Hey everyone, DJ here. Always wanted to create a tier list for the Final Fantasy games. I mean, for everyone who knows me, this is by far my favorite video game franchise of all time, and I just really wanted to do one of these. So I wanted to create one, not so much of a subjective one of how I personally feel about the games. If you do want to see something like that, please drop a comment. I'll be more than happy to create a new tier list on how I would rank them. But I wanted to do this one as objectively as I can, as any one person can be objective, with a little bit of a twist. I'm going to rank these objectively for how these games would be ranked when they release. As we all know, not every game ages the same. Some games age like fine wine, some age like a moldy cheese sandwich. It's just the truth. So I really wanted to do this for where, how did this game compare to other games out at that time, and how does it compare to other previous Final Fantasy? Okay, and then the tier ranking I'm going to do here is S is going to be strictly for anything that was a game changer or just an instant classic when it dropped. A is going to be for like an amazing game. B is going to be for great. D is good. E is bad, and F is going to be what were they thinking? What were they thinking on this one? All right. So that's how we're going to do this list here. And let's start off with the first one. I'm going to rank that as an A. Very first one. This was very much a passion project for Sakaguchi. This is, you can feel it when you play it. Like, this was a lot of heart and soul was kind of like poured into this one. Doesn't really have much of a story, more focused on the gameplay. But there is something very magical when you play this game. The reason this is an A and not an S is because its competition, the king at the time for the whole RPG genre, was really Dragon Quest. They were doing it the best at the time, and this game was not on par with Dragon Quest. But it was really the first one to give Dragon Quest serious competition, where they felt that they had to step up their game and they knew they had a true competitor at that time. This is the reason why the very first one gets that A rating. And then Final Fantasy II, also going to get an A. Now I know this is usually the one that's at the bottom of everybody's tier list, because this one really did not age well. But when it was first released, it had a much better story than the first one. Its upgrade system was kind of revolutionary. It took bits and pieces from like other games like Ultima and stuff like that in the past, and they created a battle upgrade system when it came to your stats. So there was no experience points, nothing like that after battle. But the more you did something, say like you had a sword equipped and you used the sword all the time, you would become more proficient with the sword. So your level would rank up with the sword. So you start doing more damage, more hits. Same thing with magic. If you're using magic all the time, you would get much better at magic, but nothing else would really level up. So it gave you a lot of flexibility of how you wanted your characters to really build up. Now, this is the only one in the Final Fantasy series to use this upgrade system. They did take it, and one of the people who worked on this game, they kind of spun this off to the Saga series, which is a series that's been going on for well over 30 years. It's been a success, this entire run for them as well. But really got its start here in Final Fantasy II. All right? Now, Final Fantasy III. This also gets an A. This is by far the best one on the NES. It packed as much as you could possibly pack into an NES game at that time. It had 3 different worlds to explore: the upper world, the regular overworld. You could even go underwater. I mean, it was a huge game. And it also introduced the job system. Now, they had, in the first Final Fantasy, they had a little bit more of a class system. You picked the class and you were stuck with that class throughout the entire playthrough, unless you did the class change or the class upgrade, through a special event. This one, you could switch the jobs in and out as you play throughout the story, and it really laid a foundation for future Final Fantasies with this one. It started to give more traits to specific jobs. So, like a dragoon, dragoons could jump and have a jump attack. In Final Fantasy II, there was a dragoon in that game, but they didn't have a jump attack or anything special along those lines. it was like everyone else, every other character in the game. So this really started to define the traits that you would see in future Final Fantasy games. It also was the first one to introduce humor. They had a funny couple little moments here and there throughout the game. The first two games really did not have that. They were very, very serious in tone from beginning to end. And this one really introduced humor. So it was an absolutely fantastic game. Last one really to be released outside of Japan from like the original games on the NES and Super NES. So kind of missed out on that one, but great game. Final Fantasy IV. This is going to be the first S tier. This was an absolute game changer for two very specific reasons. First, it was the first one to have a true comprehensive story. This came about after a meeting with Sakaguchi and some people at Famitsu magazine, which explained to them like the reason why they did not hold Final Fantasy in the same level or same tier as Dragon Quest is because the narrative for the games were very simple and it focused more on gameplay. But Sakaguchi said, well, that's the whole reason why we created these games. This is what we were doing in the very beginning, is just to have a really good gameplay experience for everyone who's playing it. And he said, no, if you really want to take the next step, you need to have a more comprehensive story. And that's exactly what they did here. This was the first video game I ever played that had a truly comprehensive story. There was twists, turns, betrayals, loves, lost, new friends. So much goes on in this game that it leaves a lasting impression. And it really allowed Final Fantasy to really embrace their ability to write really good stories to go along with really good gameplay. The other thing that this game did was it introduced the ATB system. Now, this is the system that has been used. It stands for Active Time Battle, not Active Turn-Based, Active Time Battle system. Throughout most of the Final Fantasy series. It's the most used among the main 16 games that were ever released. 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 12, and 13 all use an ATB system. Now 12 and 13 have a little bit more of a modified ATB system, but it's still an ATB system nonetheless. Half the games use this. I know a lot of people are asking for Final Fantasy to go back to turn-based. I really think they mean more this system than they do mean turn-based, because turn-based was only used in 1, 2, 3, and 10. If anybody wants a video on that one, trying to like really explain these different battle systems, yeah, and let me know. But I have a lot of fun kind of creating something like that to kind of break those down as well. But 4, absolute game changer, also took humor to the next step as well, which started to become a little bit of a staple for a lot of the Final Fantasy games that really wanted you to have fun while playing the game within the narrative, but also be able to laugh and have a good time. 5. This one I'm going to put as an A. Now, this is a game that has aged very well. This is one of those aged like fine wine. If I was to rank this, like subjectively, I'd put this as an S tier game. But when it first got released, the story was simpler. It's a funny story. It's by far the funniest story within the whole Final Fantasy series. It really did not take itself too serious, but it didn't improve upon the, like the graphics. It didn't improve upon the gameplay. It did improve upon the job system. This is by far the best job system, and really the last Final Fantasy game to really embrace the job system to date of the mainline games. Tactics was a spin-off, but this one did a fantastic job with the battle system. So definitely not taking anything away from that. It just wasn't as great or as game-changing as 4. 4 kind of like set that staple. But 5, if you have not played 5 yet, do yourself a favor, play that game. Absolutely amazing game. Final Fantasy VI. S. Easy S. It was an immediate classic when this game dropped. It changed the game in a lot of different ways. There's no real main character. I know Terra's here in the logo, but there's really not a main character to the story, which was very different than anything they ever did before. They really pushed the graphics to the limits on the Super Nintendo. First time they kind of pushed past the fantasy world, medieval vibe of the previous Final Fantasy games. Really started to have a little bit of steampunk vibes to it as well. So they started to kind of change where they were going with like embracing the world, embracing growth and stuff like that. The music is phenomenal. The world is phenomenal. And it's not even gonna be a hot take. This has the best villain in the Final Fantasy series. Sephiroth from 7 will always be the most popular, and I get it. Sephiroth is a very multi-layered character. Hero falling into the big villain and stuff like that. Kefka, by far the best villain. He actually won. He accomplished the goal that he set out to do, and he did it. No other villain can really claim that. And then you're kind of like left to kind of like get everyone back together and try to stop what he did, even though you can never reverse it. And he didn't have any motive outside of just being pure evil, pure chaos, and that's really what makes him this fantastic villain. There's no redemption. There's no tragic story of a fallen hero or anything like that. This is just evil for evil's sake, and he does it the best. And Dancing Mad, Chef's Kiss, fantastic boss theme for that one. So 6, absolute easy S. 7, this also gets an S. Okay, this here was the game changer. Prior to Final Fantasy VII, role-playing games were very much a niche category within video games. It had a following, people really enjoyed them. This was the first one to really get crossover appeal. It's still one of the very best sellers on the PlayStation 1. Even had the title for a while. It's called the PlayStation Seller. Like, I know I personally bought a PlayStation just to play this game, but it was overhyped for the PlayStation Seller aspect of it. But a lot of people who've never played a role-playing game before, who had no idea what Final Fantasy was, bought this game, fell in love with it. Most people, their introductory to the series is through this game. First one to embrace 3D graphics, had CGI cutscenes, and when you play the OG, you could definitely tell that they were still trying to figure it out. They made the big jump from cartridge to CD-ROM because of what they wanted to do. The cartridge just couldn't quite handle it. It changed the game in so many different ways. It also introduced mini games. And they had quite a few of them. I mean, they even had the Gold Saucer, which was just an area to go to play mini games, and then other mini games kind of spread throughout. And it also had a much more modern feel, modern look to it. So it caught people at that time. Easy S tier. Final Fantasy VIII. This is a hard one to put in A, but I'm gonna put this as an A. Graphically, it was stunning. It was even a bigger step up from Final Fantasy VII. The CGI cutscenes were absolutely phenomenal. They actually interlaced the gameplay with some of the CGI cutscenes, which I've never seen before from any of the other games out there. Unbelievable job. They fumbled the third act a little bit. Not a little bit. They kind of fumbled the third act of the game, and that's kind of one of the reasons why this one is an A and not an S. The junction system confused a lot of people as well, but it was a fantastic game. There's a reason why it's generally the third best-selling game out there for Final Fantasy for a reason. It's much love. They also kind of dropped a lot of the mini games and really concentrated on one. They had a little Chocobo mini game, but there was one mini game that came out of this one. And for the main series, it is by far the best mini game, and that is Triple Triad. It is a card game. It is addictive. It's fun. It breaks the game wide open. There are times when you will play this game and you will get lost in that mini game for hours and not even be mad at it. It is legitimately that good. Final Fantasy IX. This is an S tier. This was an instant classic. They brought back the fantasy vibe with this one. It was actually a spin-off. When this game was first being developed, it was actually going to be Final Fantasy Gaiden, which is just be a spin-off game, and it was meant to kind of really just show love to the series up to that point, which is the reason why this game has more allusions to previous Final Fantasy games. It is something that Final Fantasy games do a lot. They do a lot of allusions to previous Final Fantasy games. This one has the most of any of them because that's how the game actually started off, and then it just kind of grew from where it was, and became the instant classic Final Fantasy IX that it is to this day. And it's also another one of those games that just keeps building and keeps getting better. More people fall in love with it. It was great. Battles were a little slow, even if you move the speed all the way up. Other than that, knocked it completely out the park. Even visually, even though it kind of dropped the modern look and went to more of a fantasy look, it's the best looking game on the PS1, but without question. The mini games were a little bit of a mixed bag with this one. The Chocobo, Hot and Cold, and everything you did with that was fantastic. Great mini game. The card game, not. The card game wasn't even based on skill anymore. It was based so much on RNG, and no one's really a big fan. I mean, I'm not saying that nobody is, but it wasn't great. And then they even had a jump roping mini game, and the hell with that. I know you need like 1,000 if you want to get like a platinum trophy, which is why I will never get the platinum trophy on this game, as much as I can do for all the other Final Fantasy. I'm good. It's just too much. Final Fantasy X. Yes. Again, this is such an instant classic as well. And I would say objectively, this is the best game in this series. Even when people ask me, who's never played any Final Fantasy game, which is the best one to start off with, I always point to 10. Because it's so good. It's the first one that had voice acting. It had duo protagonists. I mean, Tidus is the main character, but Yuna's just as much the protagonist as Tidus is in this one. It only had one mini game in this one. It went with Blitzball, which is very much hit or miss with a lot of people. I personally love Blitzball. I find it to be a lot of fun. I do understand also why not everybody's into it. But if you want a fantastic game, the story is amazing. It's heartbreaking. It has its funny moments. It's perfectly balanced. It really is, which is not easy to do. Play this game. It's so good. The world, everything that's about it is so fantastic. Final Fantasy XI. This is also going to get an A. So this one had to compete with World of Warcraft at the time. While this is an amazing game within itself, it wasn't anywhere near the top of the list. It just, it relied a little bit too much where you had to have parties that were mandatory when you first started playing this one. But it's really good. It's still even going to this day. There's even been a resurgence for this game. It's also the last game that was released from Square. And it's only one of the two MMOs that are on this list. Okay? But Final Fantasy XI, great game, amazing game. Just when it was released, it was an A. Final Fantasy XII. This is the first game to be released under Square Enix. This one's going to get a B. Now, there was a lot of issues with the development of this game. It took a very long time. It got delayed a lot. Even the director of the game, throughout the most of the game itself, of like putting the game together, he stepped away, and then they had to kind of like scramble to get it finished at the very end. The battle system was a little bit more like an MMO system, and they had the Gambit system in there as well. And one of the big things was when you first start playing the game, you don't really dive into the battle system, which is great. It is a great battle system once you really get into all the different layers into it. It's very awkward at first, and a lot of it feels like the game is playing itself. But once you get adjusted to it and really see how the battle system works, it's still a really good game. It did not have a lot of humor. It was the first one that really kind of took the humor away from the storyline. It had like one hidden fishing mini game that was in there. Other than that, the game itself was very serious from beginning to end. Still a great game, but it wasn't anywhere near on the same level as the previous Final Fantasy games that came out. Now, Final Fantasy 13, the most divisive, whatever you want to call it, in the series. Love it or hate it, this one is also going to be a B. Now, I personally love this game. It's one of my favorite ones, and it definitely got a bad rap from some reviews that came out when it first was released that called it a hallway simulator. And it also came out the same time that everybody wanted open world game. Okay, so a lot of Final Fantasy fans just kind of dove into that a little bit too much with the hearing that it was a hallway simulator. Final Fantasy X is much more of a hallway simulator than 13. Even the first 9, they hid the hallway simulator part of the games through like the open world map, but they're very much, they tell you on a very straight line what the story is itself. So this one to kind of get that same type of label, to me just felt a little weird for them to say that, but it kind of like really hung on. This is starting to get also resurgence now, and a lot of people are like giving this game a second chance or really trying it for the first time and are really enjoying it. They're really seeing how good this game was when it first came out. Now, it's not an A because there's definitely some faults with this game. I'm not just giving it an easy pass. It's by far the hardest within the series. They made a silly idea of when the party leader dies, it's game over, which huge mistake. Visually, it was very, very stunning. The battle system, the paradigm system, has a lot of depth to it, a lot of flexibility, and they put caps on where you could get with like experience. So you couldn't just sit there and grind for hours and make yourself overpowered, which I kind of like because it kind of kept the story pedal to the metal, and you're just constantly going and pushing the story along until you finally get to like this one part where you can like really grind if you wanted to. It's a great game. It's nowhere near as bad as a lot of people say, but it's definitely not as great as the other previous Final Fantasy games were as well. I'm not going to give it that. So this one's just going to be a very solid B because it is a great game. Now, Final Fantasy 14, the beloved MMO RPG, humongous following. So many people love this game. F. When this game first released, it was the very first Final Fantasy to truly bomb. Truly bomb. I mean, it took more L's than your average Chicago resident. It was so bad. It was so bad. They fired everyone that worked on it, brought in Yoshi P and his staff to try to fix it. They couldn't. They couldn't fix it. It was so bad. It was so broken that they decided to really destroy the world. So they destroyed the world that was created for 14 when it was first released, and then re-released it as Final Fantasy 14: A Realm Reborn. From A Realm Reborn on, this is an S tier game, no question. Objectively, subjectively, whatever, it is an S tier game, as good as any Final Fantasy game has ever been made. But when it first released, because that's when I'm doing this, how it compares to other games, not just so much fan reception, but how the game itself was, this game was bad. It was so bad. But it's an all-time great now. Final Fantasy 15. This one I'm gonna put as a C. It was the very first open world Final Fantasy, which in a lot of ways stunted the storytelling. You know, Final Fantasy thrives on telling a very specific story. Like, that's where they're at their best. This one ended up being almost a little bit of a choose your own adventure. And when you're kind of jumping around between all the different storylines, it doesn't have it as compelling and cohesive as it could be. Now, the other part that really knocks this one down is that you had to get the DLC to fill in story gap. To me, that's humongous. No, that drops you a grade 100% without question. When you buy a game, you should be able to get the full story without having to pay extra to fill in the gaps within the story. Have the full story, then add to it with the DLC. Don't do it that way. That's just always been a bad choice. Now, the bromance in it was great. The characters are all fantastic. It's a really, really good game. It's a lot of fun. It was a mess on when it first was released, hence the C. It wasn't bad, but it was good. It was good. Way too much product placement as well. But the Royal Edition, you get a chance to play this game, play the Royal Edition. Do not play the day one release. The Royal Edition fixed a lot of the issues. It makes it for a much better game, where Initially, you could only play as Noctis. The Royal Edition, you can switch in between the different characters as you choose to. Makes it for a lot more fun. Last one on the list is Final Fantasy 16. I'm actually going to give this one an A, because this really is an amazing game. It's stunning. Like, visually, it's stunning. The icon battles are absolutely epic. Some of the stuff that does knock it down is there is no party. I feel like having a party in a Final Fantasy game is a defining moment, a defining part of these games. And Clive is great, don't get me wrong. As a character, Clive is S-tier character, one of the best that Final Fantasy has created. But it just not having that party really does kind of knock it down. This did kind of get a Devil May Cry fantasy title to it, because they took like the combat director from the Devil May Cry series and brought him in to do the battle system within Final Fantasy 16. And it's not that. This is not a Devil May Cry game that's tied into like a Final Fantasy. This is truly a Final Fantasy game through and through. People who are not used to like the action RPG, they actually switch it up. You could pick two different modes. You could do like a regular mode, or you can even do like a story mode where the gameplay is a lot easier. And they even had accessories that would even do a lot of the dodging and stuff like that for you if you just were not good at like the action RPG stuff. So you could really still do it as more like an ATB type of a system, and you're just not really doing much of the action stuff. For that to be an excuse, that's not an excuse. They absolutely fixed that within the game. So if that's the reason why you have not played this, give it a shot. It is really well done. It's definitely more mature. You could definitely feel the Game of Thrones vibes with this one. I know that they had a lot of the staff watch a lot of the Game of Thrones the show, and kind of like brought in some like characteristics from this. And because I do like that this game also goes back to like the fantasy world more so than the modern world, which I thought was really nice, because Final Fantasy, I feel, feels right in that medieval high fantasy type of a world. And I will end this with 16 objectively saying, this is bold, best Cid in the series, which is saying something, because Cid has been a staple within Final Fantasy since number 2 in every single Final Fantasy game to be released. There's been some amazing Cids. This one had the best Cid. So there's my list right there for when games were released. If anybody wants to see a list where I just go over how I feel about the games, just let me know. And thank you so much for watching, and stay tuned for some more videos. Peace.